Hello, I am Kiron Lee, in charge of this conference. The 6th Hangul Artist Contest was held in non-face-to-face due to the COVID-19. This conference is a special discussion on the Korean characters and Korean literatures viewed by the representative writers of the International Pen Headquarters and their literary meanings according to show video, Korean characters, and Korean literatures. The participating writers are President of Romanian Pen and novelist Magda Kaneishi, President of the Algerian Pen and former board member of International Pen Mohamed Magani, President of Ethiopia Pen and writers Solomon Harle Mariam, President of Netherlands Pen and Chairperson of the International Pen Foundation Director Job Digner, President of the Albanian Pen and also writers Antonel Kasai, President of Slovakia Pen and poet, translator, and Radosław Bolk, President of French Ocean Pen and poet, Jan Friedrich Boron, and a Vice President of Turkey Pen, a poet, actors Hari Abraham Ozkan. Before we starting talking, let's watch a video.
There are numerous languages currently used throughout the world. But a number of languages have vanished since the 20th century due to the dominance of other languages. And now there are only 600 languages in use today. However, except for 60 of these languages with written forms, the rest are expected to disappear within the next century.
세종대왕의 한글 창제로 인해서 한국문학의 꽃을 피웠습니다. 한글이 없었다면 한국문학 존재하지 않습니다. 여기서 끝나지 않고 세종대왕의 그 창제 이상은 세계로 뻗어나갈 겁니다. 그래서 전 세계의 문학 그리고 전 세계의 문화 전반을 그 살찌게 하는 그런 중요한 촉매제가 되리라고 저는 확신하고 또 확신합니다.
About 60 languages are based on ideograms like the Chinese language. But Hangul is based on phonograms, which formulate words as they sound. The Korean alphabet was invented by King Sejong the Great, the fourth king of the Joseon dynasty. After he ascended the throne in 1420, Sejong established Jipyeonjeon, Hall of Worthies, to promote various scholarly endeavors such as the publication of numerous writings. He ordered Park Yeon to comprehensively organize every musical instrument, music and scores of ceremonial music, Chinese music and Korean music. He also composed well-known pieces of music such as Jeondae-up and Bo-tae-pyong. King Sejong produced astronomical instruments for the people to use, especially those working in agriculture. He used an astronomical chart from ancient and modern ages and created a new astronomical chart. He also invented a rain gauge to measure rainfall, the first such instrument of its kind in the world. Thanks to King Sejong, the 15th century saw the flowering of Korean culture. The invention of Hangul, considered a masterpiece of Korean culture, contributed to the reputation of Sejong's reign as the golden age of Korean culture. This period of great advancement of Korean history coincided with the Renaissance in the West. Therefore, King Sejong's period can be called the Korean Renaissance.
IT 시대의 모든 시스템, 그 복잡한 것이 0과 1, 오프, 온 두 개에서 일어나지는 디지털의 변화를 가지고 여러 가지 의미의 클래스를 만듭니다. 한글 역시도 이 선 하나 가지고 무수한 모음의 변화를 주는 것입니다. 수평을 이루는 선에서 위에다가 점 하나를 찍어도 글자 하나가 생깁니다. 한국에서는 5입니다. 아래다 찍으면 우가 됩니다. 0과 1. 그 두 개에서 일어나는 것과 똑같은 원리에 의해서 만들어진 것이 한글이기 때문에 그것이 가장 단순하면서 복잡한 것을 그려낼 수 있는 우리들이 지금 경험하고 있는 디지털 문명을 이끌어갈 수 있는 하나의 문자 표현이다.
Hangul originally consisted of 28 letters, vowels, and consonants. The letters for consonants reflect the shapes of tongue and lips when they formulate sound. And vowels are made from letters representing heaven, people, and earth. Among them, the 4 letters are no longer in use. Words can be formed and arranged as they sound, in first, middle, and last. The script of Umin Jong-un says, "If you learn the letters, you can write the sound of animals crying. It is a marvelous and wondrous invention." For example, PEN International can be inscribed as the letters are pronounced, which is PEN International in Hangul. The reason why Korea is a strong player in the age of the internet is because Hangul allows people to use the letters conveniently. Some scholars even claim that King Sejong might have predicted the coming of the IT age 600 years ago. Korea, with its history of about 5,000 years, has emphasized literature throughout its history. During the Middle Ages, most Western countries were ruled by military power, but Korea was led by literary government officials. There was a state examination system to recruit government officials, and the biggest proportion of the exam was the composition of poetry in accordance with the given topic. They gave good poets high recognition for their academic achievement and viewed those who wrote well to have strong personal and national identity. This system began during the reign of King Gwangjong, who was the 4th king of the Korean dynasty and continued for more than 500 years in the Joseon dynasty. So literature was required of aspiring national leaders. The literary elites used Chinese characters at the time because it was difficult to learn them. Literature and scholarship were the sole privileges of the ruling class. The invention of Hangul brought about a revolutionary change to Korean literature. King Sejong, who promulgated Hangul in 1446, shortly thereafter required the scholars use Hangul to compile Yongbi Ochonga. The 5 books, 10-volume exilographic Yongbi Ochonga is the first publication to be produced in Hangul. King Sejong also gave orders to use Hangul in official documents, so it increasingly became an important tool of communication for the common people. The use of Hangul prompted the spread of literature from the high class to the low class, and such literary works as the novel and shijo, or short lyric poem, attracted the attention of the public as new readers. The first Korean novel was the tale of Hong Gil-dong, written by Ho Gyun, which was highly critical of the gap between the rich and the poor and other social injustices. Thereafter came didactic novels such as the tale of Jeonghwa Hong-yong, tale of Shim-jong, and tale of Hong-bung, and there were also romance novels like Ong-numong, tale of Suk-hyang, and tale of Chun-hyang. These novels, whose authors remain unknown, revealed the feelings and anger of the lower classes. Many popular novels appeared, criticizing and satirizing the social conditions. Furthermore, shijo became a medium of literature for the common people, popular with Kim Chon-tek and Kim Soo-jang, low-ranking government servants or foreign noblemen, and Hwang Jin-hee, a female entertainer. Korean literature flourished and appealed to the public with the help of Hangul. The opening of Korea to foreigners in 1876 brought about a drastic change to the tradition of Korean poetry. Influenced by Western literature and on the basis of traditional poetry, a free form of modern poetry began to develop. Choi Nam-son established Shin Moon-kwan, a publication office in 1907, and started the monthly magazine Boy in 1908. Choi published a poem using the new form in its inaugural issue entitled From the Sun to Boy. The poem contained an unheard-of structure in which he wrote the poem freely without being confined to traditional rules. Literature can unite us and the world together. A peaceful world can come when words create literature, to be handed over heart to heart from one generation to another. Literature empowers us to be together.
This video was made for members from around the world at the opening ceremony of the 78th International Pen Congress held in Gyeongju, Korea in 2012. The reason for making is simple. When I attended the International Pen Congress as the president of Korean Pen in 2009, among many questions asked the representative from the other countries, what language do Koreans use? Do you speak Chinese or do you speak Japanese? It was a big shock for me. I never imagined that I would be asked such a question. I need a lengthy explanation. I want this is not. And so I made this video to show literary people around the world. After that, I was the first Korean to be elected as the board member of International Pen. The many countries began to invite me to their own literary event. At this time, I copied this video and distributed as well as displayed at the event. Now, many members of International Pen knows the Hangul is a unique Korean letters created by King Sejong. Those days they say Hangul is a voice written by one man artificially. I showed this video to all the others who participate today. Then it's time to talk about it. Let's begin. First, Magda Kaneshi. Magda Kaneshi, you invited me to the Romanian Pen Literature's event in May 2017. I was surprised that you are interested in Korean literature, which you showed at the event, in which your country's president also participated. I was surprised that the president was also present. So you said, the president meet only members of Pen among the writers. How wonderful countries you are. Before you are talking, I would like if you could introduce yourself to the Korean writers.
Hello, my name is Magda Kaneshi. I'm a writer from Bucharest, capital of Romania in Europe. I write poetry, prose, and art essays, and I have several books translated into English, French, and Spanish. For 8 years now, until very recently, I was the president of PEN Romania, and in this quality I meet Jill Won Lee in his quality as president of PEN Korea during several congresses organized by PEN International in the last years. Thanks to Jill Won Lee's gentleness and enthusiasm, I started to be interested in contemporary Korean literature. I discovered that several Korean poets and prose writers have already been translated into Romanian, and there is a growing interest in Korean literature in my country.
Thank you, Kanesi. I would like to hear your impression of the Korean characters and Korean literature by watching the video I showed you.
Looking at the video created by PEN Korea, I learned about the Hangul alphabet and about the great King Sejong I, who invented it, as he invented musical instruments and astronomical tools. I also learned how the Korean history and culture have developed during the centuries and especially in the last decades. I found it very interesting that the Hangul alphabet is one that prepares the human minds for the computational operations, and this explains, I think, the extraordinary flourishing of IT industry in your country. For me, Korea is a fascinating cultural space, and thanks to the pan-international network among countries and continents, I think that the Korean poets and writers and playwrights and editors and translators and so on will be better and better known and appreciated all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech, Kaneshi. Next, Mohamed Magani. During the Korean-Algerian Cultural Friendship Exchange Contest held in Algeria in September 2017, several Korean writers, including myself, participated in the event. Thank you again for the kind hospitality of Algerians at that time. You have visited Korea many times and are relatively well known to Korean. However, would you please introduce yourself once more?
I am Mohamed Magani, a writer from Algeria. I am primarily a novelist, author of 16 books. I write novels in the French language and then even tried my hand at writing short stories in English. My areas of interest in literature shift from the existential, psychosocial and political novels to the pursuit of the idea of art for art's sake, for the sheer pleasure of writing with no function. For several years, I have been committed to developing and furthering cultural and academic relationships between Algeria and Korea. For this goal, I helped found the Algerian-Korean Friendship Association in 2017. And in the next year, that is 2018, we managed to hold two major events in Algiers. A meeting on women leadership in Algeria and Korea, and the second one, a literary meeting bringing together academics, writers, poets, and novelists. From the two events, largely reported in the press, people in Algeria learned a great deal about the history, culture, and dynamics of Korean culture, and above all, the distinctive characteristics of the Korean language, Hangul.
I also hope that the Korean-Algerian friendly culture exchange will be successful, as you might think. Let's try to do that together. We will meet you again the next year in Algeria. Could you please tell us your thoughts of the Korean language and Korean literatures you have seen and felt? Who have visited Korea many times?
It is often said that Korea is the miracle of the river Han. I would dare say that Hangul is the double miracle of King Sejong, who conceived it in the 15th century, and the Korean people who adopted it and kept it against all odds through the ages, and developed it into its modern form appropriate for science, technology, arts and literature. Himself a scholar and a sophisticated phonetician, King Sejong understood well the chasm between the learned aristocracy and the administration on the one side and the uneducated vast majority of the people on the other, and saw in that situation illiteracy as the crux of the matter. It is an admirable achievement in history that a powerful king in the 15th century committed himself to educate his people, to unify the different territories under his rule, and command of a common language. All the more admirable is the fact that he based his language on phonetic principles, thus rendering it accessible to virtually anyone as it is written, the way it is pronounced. 28 letters made up the language. The system allowed even for the sounds of animals to be pronounced. Perhaps can we find here one of the historical roots of the consistency of the environment literature in Korean culture. Nature and literature are ever present in the minds of Korean writers. I had the opportunity and the luck to visit Korea on 3 occasions, during which I found it feasible to attempt learning words and sentences of the Korean language to get by in the society, with the help of people and writers proud of their language and their booming literature, which today appears to accompany, even espouse, the economic, technological and industrial development of Korea, as well as its cultural industry. This is evidenced by the prizes and awards it has received in literary circles around the world in recent years.
Mohammed Magani, I have heard your words more interested about knowing and understanding Hangul and Korean literature than we do. Thank you for your word. Next, Solomon Halimariam. Ethiopia is the country that is grateful to us who sent the troops to defend Korea's liberal democracy during the Korean War. It's maybe because of that reason you and I were a special relationship at the International PEN. I would be grateful if you could take this opportunity to greet Korean writers.
Hello, my name is Solomon Haile-Mariam. I'm the founder and president of PEN Ethiopia. I'm an academic and a writer. I wrote many short stories and novels. One of my novels won the first BERT Award for African literature. I write both in English and Amharic. Amharic is the official language of Ethiopia, and Ethiopia has its own alphabet as well. My works have been translated to many international languages, including French, Germany, Italy, Spain, and other languages. I am passionate about writing, and writing is my major preoccupation. I would like to use this opportunity to thank Korean PEN President for publishing 4 of my short stories in English. He is a very enthusiastic and international literary figure, and thank you. 감사합니다.
Dr. Solomon, I would like to hear your opinion on the major topic of the Korean language and Korean literature.
Hello again, this is Solomon Haile-Mariam from Ethiopia. I watched the video of Korean literature done by the Korean PEN International Center. It was well done and showed me how Koreans are passionate about their alphabet. Hangul is a wonderful alphabet indeed. As I understood now, the Korean alphabet was developed by King Sejong the Great in 1446. The video clearly explained how and why Hangul has been a scientific and logical language or writing system. I do understand that IT revolution was predicted and facilitated by Korean alphabet long time ago. This is indeed very fascinating. A Korean alphabet created that the alphabet or literature was not a privilege of few, but the way for the people to write, which showed that King Seonjung the Great was very progressive and led the people with great wisdom. I do appreciate the Korean Pen International Center work and endeavors to preserve and promote Korean literature around the world. We know that Korean literature now is, all over the world through the film and short dramas and poems, and we are all watching the progress of Korean literature, and we indeed admire the work of Pen Korean International Center, and we wish you all the best, and 감사합니다.
Thank you, Solomon. I listened to your opinion of Hangul and Korean literature. Thank you again. 접디거나, 엽디거나. It's been a long time to 엽디거나. Thank you once again as an advisor of North Korean writers in exile pen centers for the special kindness you have shown to those members with your deep interest in the issue of North Korea, especially human rights in the North Korea. For that reason, you have visited Korea a few times. Could you please take this opportunity to greet Korean writers?
Geachte vrienden, this is Dutch for dear friends or Tsnede Chingo. My name is Job Degenaar from the Netherlands. I'm a poet, literator, linguist and president of Pen Emergency Fund. For 35 years I have taught students of different mother tongues. This made me realize how illogical and therefore difficult my own native language sometimes is. And also the Dutch orthography, the writing system, based on 26 letters from the Latin alphabet, causes problems. For example, one letter is overloaded because it's used for 3 sounds. Combined with the letter R, the pronunciation can also change into a 4th sound. In 2013, the poet of the book Masque, of Mr. Jilwon Lee, taught me in the literature house in Seoul the rudiments of Hangul, founded by King Sejong. And these are the notes of Mr. Jilwon Lee. It's a very simple phonetic display which seems to fit well within this digital era. You can in an easy way build words with it as if you built solid castles.
That's right. Hangul is made by combined 24 basic letters. It is the scientific and the logical writing that anyone can easily learn. Could you tell us your feeling after watching the video, Korean characters and Korean literatures that I showed you?
Watching the movie, I enjoyed the point of view that worldwide spread literature contributes to a better, peaceful world. And I was impressed by the great significance of King Sejong in so many areas of knowledge, and the fact that the Korean leaders from earlier ages were highly literary classed and practiced arts, while in the Western world the rulers were fighting for land. The cruel division between North and South Korea has caused completely separate ways for writing literature. I sincerely hope that one day these roads will find each other again and become one major highway. Dank u wel.
It's like human rights activities.
감사합니다.
It's like human rights activities you are resonating with your world that North and South Korea must someday become one and find each other again. Thank you. And next, Antonel Kazai, President of Albanian pen and writers Antonel Kazia. Thank you for your attending the 6th World Hangul Artist Contest. After watching the video called Hangul and Korean Literatures, how did you feel from the change appearance of the Hangul and Korean literature, the cultural heritage of Korea? Could you tell us what else you are thinking?
Rana from Albania. Thank you for your kind invitation. I'm Antela Kasi, writer, president of the Albanian Pen Center. I wish I was with you all at this very beautiful conference organized about the Korean literature, language and characters. South Korea in my memories remains as a treasure. I had the chance to be once there for the Pen International Congress, so beautifully organized from the Korean Pen Center and Mr. Gilwon Lee. Thank you very much again. From the ancient time up to modern time, languages change as people change, as time changes. From the ancient times, the Korean model of poetry was the kind of a beautiful song with all influences of Buddhism, Taoism, and also with the philosophy of Confucius. But what we can say today in the modern time, the Hangul, the modern Korean language, where the literature is written, the poetry, brought to the mankind and to the society very beautiful works of art and literature. Indeed, also it brought very beautiful music. What I'd like to mention today is a lot, but time sometimes is not enough, and we do not have the real time to say everything. So I wish I was with you there to listen more and to know more and to meet the poets of your country. But what I'd say from the deep expressions and knowledge of my origin, that there is a time for everything. Into your language and in your origin of your Korean people, there is a saying, after hardship comes the happiness. As it was in the ancient time, today again, the topic of literature, there is a mankind itself and the human nature. But despite of languages, nationalities, borders, the world of literature remains a treasure for the entire society, from the west to the east of the world, from the ancient up to modern times. So, dear friends, with love and respect, yours always, Antela Kasi.
Culture is such a literature as an art have not lived in the same area as time has passed. And we cannot touch or directly touch the heritage, but we have here your word that is a great heritage and treasures left to the mankind. Thank you. And next, hello, Bolko. When I meet you at the International Pen Congress, I felt that you had a special thought about the East, especially India. I thought your action were also Oriental. At the time, you said to me you want to know about Korea. I would be grateful if you could introduce yourself to Korean writers, the representative culture country of the East.
My name is Ladislav Volko. I am Slovak and I live in Bratislava. I am a publicist, poet and translator and university teacher. Thanks to my interest in the culture of the Orient, I later became an ambassador to India and for some other countries. For several years I was the secretary and president of the Slovak Pen Center. I studied sociology at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland, and this is the source of my exceptional interest in Poland, Polish culture, film and literature. I am right in Slovak, which is my native language, and in Polish. 15 years, I work in the Slovak Film Institute, and after political change, I work in diplomacy. At first, I was deputy to Poland as the director of the Czechoslovak Cultural Center. After Czechoslovakia split into two countries, I founded and led the Slovak Cultural Institute in Warsaw. Later, I served in my beloved Asia as ambassador to India and a few neighboring countries. Poland and India and their culture have had a special impact on me. I have published my poetry in Polish language in various literary reviews and currently regularly contribute to the Polish intellectual magazines. In Slovakia, I publish my work in Slovenské pohľady, Rhomboid, and many other magazines. In India, I have published two collections of my poetry. Ma, Mother, in 4 languages, English, Polish, Hindi and Slovak, and Yellow Angel and Buddha in Hindi. I also published anthology, contemporary Slovak poems, and for children book Slovak Tales, but in Hindi, and my poetry in India literary magazines. I have published my poetry in several anthologies in the USA, and thanks to Mr. Lee Gil-won, in 2 anthologies of the Korean Pen Center. I continue to devote myself to journalism in essay writing, but I say about myself that I am a Sunday poet, because poetry is for me a reflection of life, asking questions and finding answers about the meaning of existence, about the beauties and cruelties of man.
I think it is meaningful that poetry is for me a reflection of life, asking questions and finding answers about the meaning of existence, about the beauties and cruelties of man. I would be grateful if you could tell us about Hangul, Korean literatures and culture, and Slovakian people's thoughts about Korea.
For an average European, pictorial writing is more of an art artifact. But I had to characterize Hindi, Chinese characters, Japanese script, or especially Hangul, I would have a hard time finding words. Since I lived in India, we often said that the Hindi script resembles spilled tea, but it also makes sense for the anything has a vigor and an immense artistic effect. But Hangul would hardly be placed in similar category. It is more pictorial, geometric, and resembles Europeans, a bit of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Each scripture is an expression of the identity of the nation, not excluding Hangul. It reflects although often difficult to identify and describe the history of community. And it is scripture that is as variable as man himself in the course of history, the nation, and individuals. Language is the basic future of the nation. It is also his weapon. It could not be different with Hangul either. In injured and the pitfalls, prohibition, destruction, because its bearers realized that there was no Hangul, there would be no Korea. Since the production of Kia cars and Samsung products in Slovakia, Slovaks have become more interested in life, culture and history of faraway Korea. not only the intellectuals, are those who are looking for Korean authors of books, films, and Korean art and culture in general. Slovaks have come into direct contact with Koreans and are trying to understand where their lifestyle comes from, respect for their family, superiors, and the elderly, as well as sense of tradition and order. My interest for Korean culture and literature started after I met Mr. Lee Gil-won from Penn Center. From the contemporary poets, resonance younger Ho Hoing on the older Ko Un, whose subtlety and beauty, as well as the many meanings of poetic paintings, always inspire me. I am glad that I had the opportunity to publish my poetry in 2 anthologies of the Korean Pen Center. In 2017 and 2018, anthology of the best literature from 40 countries, published and edited by Lee Gil-won, and thus contributed a little to the interconnection of our countries, cultures, which despite all have much in common. Ladislav Volk.
I can understand your thought of this. Thank you, Rod. Jean Frederick Boron. Hi, Boron. Southern French, including Provence, is known as the birthplace of the many famous literary figures, including Alphonse Daudet. Even the wheat fields on the hills have been well preserved as they were 100 years ago. It is making a pledge that cultures around the world want to visit at least once. Thank you for your participation in this conference. First of all, please say hello to Korean writers.
I am Jean-Frédéric Brun. I am the president of the Occitan Pen Center. I will first introduce my language, Occitan, because it's probably not familiar to many people. You can see on this map that all the south of France and some little parts of Italy and Spain represent the area where the historical language was not French but Occitan. This language belongs to the family of Romanic languages. Occitan has been written since the 10th century and gave birth to an important literature with thousands of writers and literary works. It played an important role in the history of European literatures during the Middle Age, but French became more and more the only language of the Kingdom of France, and other cultures were progressively erased. However, we have been so lucky to obtain a Nobel Prize in 1904, given to our great poet Frédéric Mistral. To introduce myself, I can say that I have been the author of a dozen of books of poetry or narrative that provide a clear demonstration with the works of many other Occitan writers that our language is not dead and wants to continue to enchant our life during the next millennium.
Your attitude toward the literature is beautiful. I think that protecting one's own language and culture is the basic attitude of the literary person. In a time when Korea was also political dark, our senior poets did not spare their mind and bodies to protect Hangul and Korean literatures. Now, can you tell us what you thought after watching the video I showed you?
Well, let me come back to the film. It is quite impressive and it delivers, I think, several important messages. The film starts with a few sentences that remind us that many languages are going to disappear during the next century. It is clear that this decrease in the number of languages and the number of living cultures on Earth is a very concerning issue, because we know at this time that language is precious thought, so that the reduction in the number of spoken languages in the world means that the richness and the power of human thought will be dramatically diminished. We know that some people dream of a unique language that would be spoken all over the world and imagine that this language will be English. People that share this belief think that it would be a good thing if languages other than English completely disappear. It is clear that this is a terrific mistake because, first, this is not realistic, and despite all efforts made to eradicate linguistic diversity, linguists tell us that there will be definitely several languages and some degree of remaining linguistic diversity. On the other hand, this will be undoubtedly a very terrific loss for human civilization. Actually, this film presents us the history of Korean culture and provides a quite impressive example of vitality that can help us to imagine how a culture can escape the expected black hole. This film points out how painful has been the history of this country, set between two very powerful neighbors. Nonetheless, we can see that after periods of storm, Korea has always been able to blossom again with a strong and rich culture. The film underlines the importance of this process in the 15th century reform of spelling that instituted Hangul as a new standard. This linguistic reform gave Korean language an even stronger identity, allowing it to adapt to a rapidly evolving world. It is quite impressive to discover that this reform seems to be one of the keys of modern success of Korean at the digital age. For all languages and culture that want to live, the example of Korea deserves careful attention. It is important for all languages to have their own standards of writing that strengthen their ability to describe the reality of the world with a specific way. And then it is important to make this language live with intensity and build the original word of which it alone carries the germ. French linguistic Henri Méchonic used to say that beyond linguistic rights, there were obligations toward languages and language. The biggest danger for a language, he said, is not the hegemony of another language, even more if this hegemony is merely economico-political, but the main danger, result of reducing language to the language, is the lack of artistic, ethical, political value creation by those who speak it. Lack of creation equals betrayal. After we have affirmed the rights of languages, it is time to proclaim our obligations toward them. I think that the wonderful film presented by the Korean Pen Center is clearly an illustration of this and an example of the solutions that can make a language fulfill its potential of enriching universal civilization.
The preservation of the language that is on the verge of disappearing is the great significance, not only to the people who speak it, but also to writers and poets. Your commitment and effort to preserve the ocean language between French and Spanish will never be in vain. Thank you for your word. Harry Abraham Uzkan, Turkey and Korea are the same Ural Altai ethnic group, and we are often referred to as the brothers countries. When your center invited the Turkish Orchard Literature Festival 2014, I have become an unforgettable memory that many Turkish people to show the Korean writers with especially hospitality. Among the several Asian writers, such as Korean, Idri, Greece, and others, it was really overwhelming for me. I had not received such a hospitality in Korea. At the time, I felt like remaining in Turkey. Would you please introduce yourself to Korean writers sought this World Hangul Writers Contest?
Hello to everyone from Istanbul, Turkey. I am Halil İbrahim Özcan, a poet and novelist, and Vice President of Turkish Pen Center, also act as the chairperson of the Writers in Prison Committee. Thank you for inviting me.
Bro Uzkan, I would like to hear your thoughts after watching the video titled Korean Characters and Korean Literature.
The great Korean King Sejong was a wise leader. He prepared a good alphabet. The Korean literature is rich. More books must be translated into Turkish. Korea and Turkey have an important friendship. The alphabet and sound of Korean impress me as magical. I have a deep interest in Korean language. We can help the world towards peace. I hope the whole Korean nation will unite with democracy. Then the rich Korean literature will be richer. Thank you so much again. My warm regards and best wishes. I feel very happy to say hello to you, Albert, via video. Once more, greetings to you from Istanbul, Turkey.
The last word is the long live in Korea. Thank you. The World Literature Society announced at the World Characters Olympic Game was held in Bangkok, Thailand from October 1st to 4th. The Hangul was ranked first. This World Characters Olympic will feature characters from 27 countries, include Korean, English, Russian, Germany, Ukraine, Vietnam, Poland, Turkey, Bulgaria, Iceland, Ethiopia, Maldives, Uganda, Portugal, Greece, Spain, South Africa, India, etc. participated and competed. The judging of criteria of the World Characters Olympic were evaluated based on the origin of the characters, the structure and type of the characters, the number of characters, the ability to combine characters, the independence and uniqueness of the characters, the practicality of the characters, and the application development of the characters. The World Characters Olympics said to be held with the aim of finding characters that are the easiest to write, the easiest to learn, and the richest and most diverse sound. As a result of screening of this World Literature Olympic, the first place was Korean phonetic script. The second place, the Indian Tagore script. And the third place was English alphabet. Hangul was once again ranked first after 2009 competition in which 6 countries competed. And its excellence was recognized worldwide. On the last day of the World Literature Olympic, scholars from all over the world declared Bangkok Declaration and announced they would try to spread the Korean language and establish the specialized Korean language department and foundation for Korean language in which national university. Bangkok Declaration also adopted they will be delivered to the countries with the population of more than 1 million and to UNESCO. The excellence of the Korean language, Hangul, has been announced all over the world. Hangul is also the best characters in the world. Today's discussion ends here. This is Kironi in Progress 4. Thank you.